The Longhorns got on the board on this 30-yard quarterback draw by Robert Brewer. It capped a 60-yard drive and was a brilliant call to take advantage of Alabama's hotly pursuing blitz. With 10:22 remaining, Alabama's lead was cut to 10-7, and the momentum was swinging with Texas. After Alabama failed to move, the Longhorns marched 80 yards to their winning score. Most of the yardage through the air, and most on big completions on third and long, like this one to tight end Lawrence Sampleton, good to the Alabama 43. When Terry Orr took it over from 2 yards out with 2:05 remaining, Texas had a 14-10 lead, but even then it wasn't over for Alabama. After Joey Jones took the kickoff back to the Texas 38, Alabama had a golden opportunity to win it. But that was quickly gone when quarterback Walter Lewis misfired a long pass into the end zone. Safety Willie Graham stepped in front of Tim Clark to grab the interception.
Well, I thought I could complete the ball. I didn't have a real good release, but that doesn't count. I thought I could get it into him, but the defensive back made a real good play, and that's one of the unfortunate things that could happen in a football game.
I thought I had the guy beat. The outside receiver, I had to entertain him, and the safety, he was coming over to take care of me. If I entertained the outside receiver, we had a trailing back coming out of the backfield. He would have been wide open, which he was wide open. But, at the minute, I was wide open, too. And that safety, you got to give him credit. He made a hell of a, play. He came over and covered lost the ground and made a big play. I took the ball a little bit. He just took it away from me, And I tried to get bumped up a little bit and see can I get a flag or something, and that didn't come out right either. He just made a good play, like I said.
After Texas conceded a safety with 45 seconds remaining, Alabama still had one last chance. Lewis was sacked on the first play, and with no timeouts remaining, Lewis took the final snap, scrambled near the sidelines, but cut back upfield before being tackled. Unable to get out of bounds, the clock ran out on Alabama and their season.
As I looked downfield, I saw that the guys were really pretty spread out there, and I had some receivers down there that could have blocked, and I was going to try to dip outside and dip back inside and maybe try to score. I felt that I could score, and with the guys downfield blocking, but they tripped me up a little bit, and unfortunately I didn't score.
From start to finish, the game was one of big plays. Alabama missed their first scoring opportunity early in the first quarter when starting quarterback Allen Gray lost the handle on the ball here at the Texas 10. Midway through the second, Bama finally got on the board, though, the scoring coming on a 3rd and 4 from the 6 when Walter Lewis drops back to pass. He scrambles to his right and finally spots a wide-open Jesse Bendros in the end zone for the touchdown. Peter Kim's point after made it Alabama 7-0. That's the way it stood at halftime. Neither team could score in the third, setting up the exciting fourth quarter. On a 3rd and 13 at the Texas 27, Lewis to the air again finds Bendros for a big first down to the Longhorn 15. But the Tide drive stalls. Peter Kim's on to boot a 22-yard field goal. Alabama leads at 10-0, 12:27 remaining. Then the Longhorns catch fire. Quarterback Robert Brewer to the air on 3rd and 13 nails Herky Walls between two Tide defenders for a big gain to the Bama 30. Again, a big play on 3rd and 10. Brewer, avoiding the Alabama blitz, runs the quarterback draw. He races untouched 30 yards into the end zone. Raul Alegre's extra point cut Alabama's lead to 10-7, only 10:22 remaining in the game. Texas now with the momentum, and Alabama unable to move. The Longhorns getting the ball back with 4 minutes remaining. Another big play. On 3rd and 10, Brewer to Lawrence Sampleton moves Texas deep in Alabama territory down to the 18. The Crimson Tide can't stop the Longhorn passing attack. 2 plays later, sophomore Terry Orr takes it over from the 8. Texas grabs the lead, just 2:05 remaining. It's 14-10. But Alabama isn't through. On the ensuing kickoff, Joey Jones comes very close to breaking it. When he's finally hauled down at the Texas 38, Alabama has great field position and still plenty of time remaining. But on the next play, Lewis attempts to hit Bendros deep. William Graham steps in front to intercept the pass at the 1-yard line, stopping Alabama's scoring threat. When Texas took the intentional safety, Alabama had one last shot. But when Lewis fails to get out of bounds with no timeouts remaining, the clock runs down. Alabama falls short in the Cotton Bowl, 14-12 to Texas.
when a situation exceeds the capability of the local community to handle it. Many states have a state disaster fund, which can pick up where the local community can't handle a situation, but yet it doesn't qualify for federal assistance. The state, in many states, can step in and offer some degree of assistance. We're not in that position in Alabama. We find ourselves having to jump from local to federal with nothing in between. And this is one of those unfortunate cases that doesn't meet the criteria for federal aid and is beyond the local community to really do anything about.
The obvious question is, why isn't Alabama able to offer that kind of assistance?
Well, one reason is that we have not had legislation that would create such a fund. For instance, the state of Mississippi recently passed a law that created, I think, a $5 million state disaster fund. And the purpose is to supplement federal aid or to fill in the gap where federal aid isn't available. Now, we have a very, very small, quote, disaster fund here in Alabama of $250,000, when we've already, to date, used about $165,000 of that. So our state disaster fund is about 2/3 depleted.
The San Diego Chargers jumped on the Miami Dolphins for 24 first-quarter points. Wes Chandler started things off in a big way for Air Coryell. That when he took this punt back 57 yards for a touchdown. But watch this. Just before halftime, scored 24-10. Don Strock goes to Duriel Harris, who flips it to Tony Nathan. Nathan does the rest, 24-17 San Diego at the half. Strock ties at 24 all in the third quarter. This time going 17 yards to Joe Rose. With Miami up 38-31, time running out. Fouts pumps and then hits James Brooks, and it's on to overtime. After both teams missed field goal opportunities, Rolf Bernerschke sent the Chargers into the AFC final with his field goal, 41-38 San Diego. Dallas nailed Tampa Bay 38-0 in the NFC game. Danny White 10 yards here to Tony Hill. Then Ron Springs plunges over from a yard out, and the Cowboys are riding high. Okay, it's Tony Dorsett's turn, and the Cowboys continue to roll. And let's not leave out the Cowboy defense. Too Tall Jones with the interception of Doug Williams. Dallas goes to next week's NFC title game against the Giants 49er winner.
When Linda Servey joined the Montgomery chapter of the National Organization for Women, she did so as a way to meet people and address problems she saw in the state and nation. Now she's spokesperson for the local NOW chapter and says the group is growing. Servey says Montgomery was the first city in Alabama to have a NOW chapter. It was founded in 1973. But now, as the new year starts, 8 Alabama cities have NOW chapters, and there are over 600 members in the state, with the numbers still growing. That's good news for ERA supporters in a time when good news is needed. Servey says the conservative trend of the nation and the election of Ronald Reagan to the presidency have done damage to the ERA movement.
We've actually made some backslides. With the economy going down, there's more competition for jobs, and many of the same old stereotypes come up. Oh, a man has to support his family. Well, women have to support their families too. Women don't work for pin money. They work.
But Servey says the damage is not irreparable. She says many people are in favor of the ERA and don't really know it because they are so ill-informed as to what it really means. Servey says all the ERA really seeks is fair treatment of all people, regardless of sex. Servey says although NOW is not a tremendously powerful force in the state, they're doing what they can to help people understand that NOW is an organization for all interested people, not just women, that they are not a bunch of radicals, but concerned citizens fighting for a constitutional amendment they feel is an important amendment. Servey says it's not only in the best interest of women, but our society as a whole. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
The Cincinnati Bengals scored twice in the first quarter. Charles Alexander here made it 7-0. Pete Johnson added another. All signs indeed were favorable for Cincinnati, but Joe Cribbs of Buffalo wasn't buying any of it. He scored twice. This brilliant 44-yard run tied it for the Bills at 14-14 early in the third quarter. Then it became an exchange of touchdowns. Alexander scored his second touchdown of the afternoon for the Bengals on this 20-yard run. That made it 21-14. Joe Ferguson countered with a 21-yard touchdown pass to Jerry Butler, tied the score at 21 apiece. But Kenny Anderson took charge. He hit Steve Kreider on the swing pass. Kreider turned a short gain into a big one when he got loose down the sideline to the Buffalo 16-yard line. Anderson followed with the game winner. This time 16 yards to rookie Chris Collingsworth. Cincinnati wins it 28-21. That'll match the Bengals with San Diego for the AFC title next Sunday. Joe Montana passed for 304 yards, leading the San Francisco 49ers to a 24-10 halftime lead over the New York Giants. The Giants got back in it in the third quarter. Scott Bruner and Johnny Perkins teamed up on this 59-yard pass to cut the 49er lead to 24-17. But San Francisco clinched it with Ronnie Lott's interception and 20-yard run back. The 38-24 win puts the 49ers in the NFC title game against Dallas. Rich Brenner for NBC News.
Last fall, the PSC turned down South Central Bell's request for a $147 million increase. Today, Camp told local JCs that decision was one of the best made by the PSC. The commission also ordered Bell to reduce its rates by $2.3 million. Well, that order was appealed to the High Court, which then overrode the commission's decision and granted the telephone company $65 million in higher rates under bond. Now, Camp advocates laws limiting the Supreme Court's authority in rate cases. He also favors a bill mandating the High Court to act within 6 months on any rate case appeal. If the court fails to act in that time frame, Camp says the commission's ruling becomes final. He's also backing another piece of legislation.
If the company was making greater than 10%, then it could not receive any supersedis relief. I believe that this bill would stand the constitutional test, and I believe it would be a big step forward in rate making in Alabama.
Camp was asked about his political future.
I believe I saw one news story that said I was 99.5% certain. That may have changed a little bit now to be about 99.8 or 9, but I'm still more concerned about the job that I've got to do at the Alabama Public Service Commission than I am any political race at this time.
Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
Be in position to run for anything.
CBS capabilities to associate administrative matters, no less a alternate option of all No action has been taken on this one. The requested effective date was January. We have requested some more information on this when we come.
It took me 2 weeks to make my mind up. I love my job so much that I had to sleep on it 2 weeks before I could make the decision. I really didn't want to leave, but I knew I had to sooner or later, and there's a lot of good men and women, like I say, that can move on up and do a good job later on.
Residents say the first twister dropped from the sky just after 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon, tearing apart a service station and 5 mobile homes near Verbena, while what's believed to be another tornado tossed cars around on Interstate 65 and snapped power lines, creating what one state trooper called mass confusion. This morning, though, the sky was clear and residents were up at dawn, picking up the pieces of their shattered homes. T.J. Giles was driving toward his mobile home when he saw the tornado.
And then I looked for the trailers, and the only thing I seen was when they went up in the air and they exploded.
Giles' home was hit hard, but not as hard as his children's 3 trailers just 50 feet away. One of Giles' daughters watched from her trailer as her brother's homes were ripped apart by the winds. Fortunately, all family members left moments before the tornado hit. Just a half-mile away, Jim Kroger of Tampa, Florida, visiting his parents in Verbena, watched the tornado approach as he ran across his parents' backyard.
But all I could see was a cloud swirling, and looked out towards the back of the trees, and it was coming up right at tree level. And as soon as it come over the trailer, it come out of the clouds, touched down the trailer, lifted the roof, and I was back there on the back porch. It swirled me off the back porch, threw me over there back by the barbed wire fence where my dad's.
Inside the trailer, Betty Kroger, her husband and 2 children huddled beneath a dining room table while the twister tore portions of the roof off and sent a tree crashing into the bedroom.
It rained. We didn't think it would ever quit. And then the power man come and he told us, he said, get out of there. They spotted another tornado. And there's nowhere we could go. You couldn't get a vehicle out, and the power lines were down on both ends of our property. And I'm losing composure. I'm sorry. We all ran to the ditch, and we were blessed because the tornado swerved and went the other way. So twice we were all saved. We've got a lot to be thankful for.
Later in the day, several area residents reported seeing other tornadoes. Damage was spread all over the county, but few people were injured, and there were no fatalities. Witnesses say it was all over in 30 seconds, but left behind is destruction that will take weeks, months, maybe years to clean up. For now, few residents know what they'll do in the way of finding new homes. Many are even uncertain where they'll spend the night tonight. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News in Chilton County. The trees near Verbena are littered with insulation. Aluminum siding is scattered for miles. The frames of just 2 of many mobile homes hit by the storm are twisted together. And everywhere, there are helping hands. Neighbors, family, and friends up at dawn trying to clean up behind just one of the tornadoes that hit the area. T.J. Giles was driving toward a cluster of 4 mobile homes belonging to him and his 3 sons when the twister struck. He says the trailers just lifted up and exploded only moments after the Giles families left. A half-mile away, Betty Kroger, her husband, and 2 of their children stayed in their double-wide trailer as the storm approached, huddled beneath a table while the tornado ripped parts of the roof off and sent a tree crashing into the bedroom. One of Mrs. Kroger's sons was swept off the back porch as he tried to get inside.
It rained. We didn't think it would ever quit. And then the power man come and he told us, he said, get out of there. They spotted another tornado. And there's nowhere we could go. You couldn't get a vehicle out, and the power lines were down on both ends of our property. And I'm losing composure. I'm sorry. We all ran to the ditch, and we were blessed because the tornado swerved and went the other way.
The number of tornadoes striking the area is uncertain. Many people in Verbena say at least 2 hit there, while others were reported all over the county. But there were very few injuries and no fatalities. And even though some families lost their homes and almost everything in them, most of them said they were happy just to be alive.
Twice we were all saved. We've got a lot to be thankful for.
Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News in Chilton County.
Things are pretty much back to normal here in downtown Sylacauga. The windows that were blown out of 40 or 50 stores have now been replaced, and the businesses are reopened. However, things at the corner of Norton and First Avenue are far from being normal. 4 businesses were totally destroyed here. Charles Garris owned a furniture store and a pawn shop and had very little insurance.
Well, I feel in estimation that we had probably $150,000 worth of total damage over the whole our business in both of them, and we had something like $30,000 worth of insurance. We've lost a life savings right here by not having it more insured.
Garris is hoping for a low-interest government loan, but the director of the State Civil Defense Department, Sam Sloan, says the city isn't eligible for disaster relief. A few days ago, investigators said the explosion, thought to be caused by a natural gas leak, could have been the work of an arsonist, but Garris disagrees.
I personally, speaking for myself, I know that it was gas. I know the building was full of gas. And certainly if it had been any kind of explosion of dynamite or anything like that, there would have to be a hole in the floor, in which there wasn't. All 3 buildings was lowered at the same time.
In the meantime, Sylacauga Police Chief Charles Humphrey says he'll wait for a state lab report on the cause of the blast. Charles Garris, who has since opened a small office around the corner from his burned-out furniture store, says his business was successful, and despite the loss, he'll remain in business with or without a government loan. From Sylacauga, Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
Well, he's a class guy, in my opinion. I didn't think he was, well, I had a little article in the paper, and it wasn't anything like I thought he would be. He's really a class person.
Were you all tired in the fourth quarter? Were you rushing 3? What was the situation there?
Well, I think they wanted a little more than we did.
Just couldn't get to the passer, huh?
Well, they just wanted more than we did, and they did the things it took to win, and they accomplished it.
Warren Law is a very good football player. I was just talking to these guys that when the two people as big and strong as Warren Law are, when we play, he's either going to whip me or I'm going to whip him. And that's the way it went all day. It was just a battle.
He seemed to have the better of it from what we saw in the first part of the game, but toward the end of the game, you all were able to hold him out and do what you had to do.
That's true. At the beginning of the game, the technique that he uses, just standing me up and letting for the back to cut off, it worked very well against our type of break to the daylight offense. And we were getting 3 yards and maybe 4 yards, but we weren't breaking anything. And toward the end, I finally figured out how to block him a little better, and that helped.
How many were they rushing down there in that last big drive when you went 80 yards?
Sometimes it felt like they were bringing 14 or 15 people because we'd run a sprint out pass, and poor Robert would have 4 people stomping down on him. But they stunted quite a lot today. It really surprised me. They were stunning almost immediately in the first quarter.
It's called ESOP, the Employee Stock Ownership Plan. Employees from 22 nursing homes in Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida formed a company known as Southern Medical Services. 2 of those nursing homes, Tyson Manor and Perry Hill, are in Montgomery. Southern Medical purchased the health facilities by purchasing stock for each employee in the amount equal to 6% of the individual's salary. Shares of stock are purchased on a periodic basis, and at the end of the year, each employee gets a statement showing how many shares have been purchased in his name, how many he already owns, and the stock's total cash value.
It is more than just receiving a salary. If they can contribute to better care and more professional care, then they know that our occupancy will be 100%. We will stay full, and it means in turn for them working harder and giving that extra care and that loving care to that patient that they will reap the benefits in the end.
The employee may claim the stock's cash value after working 1 full year, but the stock is held in trust until the employee retires or resigns. The longer each employee works, the more his stock is worth. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Bank officials say the 2 suspects entered through the back door of the bank. One carried a sawed-off shotgun. About 12 customers were in the bank. All were ordered to lean up against the wall and then to squat. Bank officials say the suspect with the weapon held it on the branch manager and then made the assistant manager retrieve the cash. No one was injured. The suspects then fled by way of the back door and drove down Cloverdale Road in a gray Ford, nearly hitting Mrs. Donald White's car.
I was coming down Felder Avenue, and a car ran the 4-way stop at the corner of Felder and Cloverdale Road and nearly hit me. So it made me mad, and I chased it for a couple of blocks long enough to realize that it did not have a license tag on it and that a man was hanging out one of the back windows, which seemed a little peculiar. So I turned around and headed back for the bank on normal business, stopped a policeman to tell him what I had seen, came on to the bank, found that the bank had been robbed and that I was chasing bank robbers.
Police say the suspects abandoned the 4-door car here at the laundromat at Carter Hill Road and Boultier Street. Police suspect the men fled in a dark green Chevrolet station wagon. It's not known if anyone aided the bandits in the second getaway. Police describe the suspects as 2 white males, one with a slender build, about 37 years old. The other is a heavy-set man, about 40 years old. Both were wearing casual clothes. Police hope to get a positive identification from the film taken when the bank's surveillance camera was activated. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
does when we have heavy winds and rain as we did over the reporting period. 1981, we had a decrease of...
That's what we resolved with council of the city of Montgomery. I guess it's the southern end. A young man by the name of Booker, who opened up the business as the
10.9% decrease. In robbery, we had a 24 continues over. It does when we have heavy winds and rain as we did. Low leaves, it has not been picked.
The governor is concerned about efficient and effective operation of the state government without wasting taxpayers' money, and he's proposing numerous money-saving measures to help reach his goal.
I don't believe in an overpriced government.
The governor is proposing cuts in state employees' benefits, saying the state retirement system provides higher-paying benefits than any other southern state, which he says places an unnecessary burden on the state taxpayers. Governor James wants to reduce the number of dollars the state pays its retired employees. James says his cost-cutting measures could save the state $40 million in the first year if the legislature approves them. On another front, James is continuing his war against crime, reviewing suggestions from his crime commission hearings like proposals to make it tougher on criminals while giving prosecutors greater freedom in seeking convictions. And the governor wants more accountability in all phases of public education in the state, from kindergarten through college. James again proposed that the Alabama Commission on Higher Education be given power to regulate the activities of state universities. James says he'd still like to see state revenues unearmarked, but he indicated that proposal won't be a big issue during the next session. And although there were many references to the upcoming year, James still refuses to say if he'll seek re-election. There were no real surprises in the governor's briefing. Many of his new plans are just extensions of old policies. Policies the governor made clear he will push in the legislature as hard as ever. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Macon County Sheriff Lucius Amerson says the robbery and shooting happened sometime between 6:30 and 7 last night.
We was met at the door by the wife of Mr. Amers, and she gave this account. She indicated that there was one white male that came to the door and rung the doorbell and asked if this is where Alex lived, and she said yes. And about that time, he placed a gun in her chest and pushed her back into the house, in which there must have been 5 or 6 kids in the house at the time. And one of the kids ran back to the bedroom where Mr. Amers was at the time watching television. And I understand that in the whole process, there were several shots fired on the inside of the house in which...
Ambers, a retired Detroit auto worker, had recently built this elaborate home, said to be worth more than $150,000. Also in the house at the time of the shooting were Amber's 35-year-old wife and 5 children, 2 other relatives and their 4 children. Amerson says it's a miracle none of them was hurt during the shootout. According to the sheriff, Ambers was shot 4 times in the chest in an exchange of shots and lay dying as one of the 5 white men, described as wearing Halloween masks, kept asking, "Where is the money?"
She looked in through all of his pockets and looked in the coat pocket, and she gave him, or gave the people who were there a roll of money, which could have been anywhere between $18,000 or $20,000.
Amerson says Ambers had negotiated a $30,000 loan at a Tuskegee bank yesterday, but had not received the money. Amerson adds that Ambers also bought a $12,000 pickup truck in Prattville yesterday and paid cash for it. The sheriff says it is not known if someone saw him carrying the money yesterday or if his killers had known him in Detroit and had followed him to Alabama. The Sheriff's Department and the Alabama Bureau of Investigations are working on the case, but have little to go on, since the witnesses were unable to give detailed descriptions of the 5 suspects. From Shorter, Alabama, Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
The proposals will be dropped in the hopper Tuesday night to the tune of over $35 million total in the budgets that are now in for the year beginning October. Our judgment that if these, I don't believe in an overpriced government, and it is my judgment that if these modifications were made, that the public would be better served to the tune of over $35 million total in the budgets that are now in for the year beginning October 1, 1982, if these reforms were put in as of that time. That blame, and that's on management. Now, in government, let's understand.
Brokaw said the men entered the back door of the bank. One was armed with a sawed-off shotgun. The customers were ordered to lean up against the wall and squat. The bank spokesman told me the man with the shotgun held it on the branch manager and made the assistant manager get the cash. The two suspects then fled by way of the back door and drove away down Cloverdale Road, almost hitting Mrs. Donald White's car.
I was coming down Felder Avenue, and a car ran the four-way stop at the corner of Felder and Cloverdale Road and nearly hit me. So it made me mad, and I chased it for a couple of blocks long enough to realize that it did not have a license tag on it and that a man was hanging out one of the back windows, which seemed a little peculiar. So I turned around and headed back for the bank on normal business, stopped a policeman to tell him what I had seen, came on to the bank, found that the bank had been robbed and that I was chasing bank robbers.
The men are described as two white males, one with a slender build, about 37 years old. The other is heavy-set and is about 40 years old. Both were wearing casual clothes. Police believe the men changed vehicles here at the laundromat on Carter Hill Road and Boultier Street. Officers are now searching for the men, who may be in a light green Chevrolet station wagon. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
Remember when the pass rush was any better than it's been this year for you guys?
Well, I don't know. I guess, it's hard to compare, year to year because every year is different, with the rule changes and all. I think, probably we've had some years where we've rushed the passer better, I think 3 or 4 years ago maybe. But, I think we've done a good job this year, and I think,
You healthy?
Yeah, I'm healthy. Ready to go.
Dr. Teague says he's not against a salary increase for lunchroom workers. He says the workers probably deserve a raise more than anybody, but such an increase should be paid by the local school boards rather than the state. He says no raises should be mandated unless the legislature makes the money available. Governor Fob James is recommending a 14% increase for teachers only, while the Alabama Education Association is recommending a 25% raise for all education employees. Dr. Teague is also recommending an additional 500 kindergarten units, 133 driver education units, and 250 special education units. Governor James wants to do away with 150 driver's education units and add 150 kindergarten units. Dr. Teague is also recommending $80 million or a $5 million increase for junior colleges and technical schools. Governor James is recommending $78.3 million or a $5 million increase. Chairman of the Alabama Commission on Higher Education, Jim Oakley, also presented his budget request. AIC is asking for $239 million for the state's colleges and universities, in contrast with Governor James' $281 million. On a legal issue, State Senator J. Richmond Pearson asked if the commission would be more effective as a constitutional rather than a statutory agency. Oakley says it would, because the people would elect the commission members and take the commission out of the political arena. Oakley told the legislators that the commission is in the process of working up a new formula that will help staff members determine how much money each school would receive. He says plans are also underway to review existing school programs and provide a standard reporting system for each school. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
These are just some of the supplies sent to a business in town from a company called Central Supply. They were supposed to be manufactured by IBM, but if you look on these boxes, you won't see any manufacturer's name. In fact, all you see is something that says for use with IBM machines.
There's not anything wrong with the supplies. It's the fact that they misrepresent that the supplies are manufactured by the company that makes the individual's machines when they're not. They misrepresent that the price is going up when they're not. And they order the products thinking they're going to get their manufacturer's products, and they don't.
Ms. Boyd says 60 to 70% of businesses in Alabama have been contacted by Central Supply. The State Chamber of Commerce is one. Okay.
Once every 3 months, I get a phone call from somebody with Central Supply telling me that they are with IBM or they are suppliers of IBM and asking us to do our business directly with them.
Well, there are numerous approaches. One of the most popular is to tell the business that the office supplies are going to be increased by the manufacturer up to 30 to 40% within the week. That way they put a deadline on the company to order the products. And normally they find out that there's no such increase that is going to be in effect. They just use that on a consistent basis.
Ms. Boyd says to avoid ordering merchandise from a bogus company, refer all calls for supplies to one person and verify the calls to make sure you know who you're dealing with. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Well, we always knew that that was an alternative. We knew that there was a December 31st deadline. We were also interested with several of the queries that we had originally made to the Department of Education that were never answered by them. They never answered any questions that we asked them. We're going to submit a progress report to Judge Hobbs here, and we will be in contact, I'm sure, with the Department of Justice shortly to determine what they plan on doing in this thing and to express to them our good faith efforts, and that the governor's only concerns for education in Alabama is effective, quality, economic education without regard to race.
On Exhibit A, other fixed base operations or operations, provided, however, premises are the operations hereunder, and any other fixed operation shall have an initial investment. Why are you trying to beat us to death? Have we not done our job? Rescind the newly published ill-advised minimum standards and stick to your commitments under your leases. These actions violate our leases. These actions represent a very dangerous, insidious social